coronavirus epidemic in the United States, New York has been described as the epicenter of the outbreak, and Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, the epicenter of the epicenter.
Obviously, Elmhurst Hospital in Queens is right now the epicenter within the epicenter.
Elmhurst Hospital is the epicenter of the epicenter.
And Elmhurst Hospital is really at the center of this crisis here in the city and in the country, with doctors desperately trying to keep up with the growing number of patients as supplies dwindle.
You see the black body bags? You say, what's in there? It's Elmhurst Hospital? Must be supplies. It's not supplies, it's people.
Also from the beginning of the crisis, ventilators were described as essential life-saving equipment, initially in short supply.
You picked the 26,000 people who are going to die because you only sent 400 ventilators.
I knew that every person who needed a ventilator and didn't get one would die.
But why does New York, and Elmhurst in particular, appear to have been hit so much harder than other places in the United States? And were ventilators ever the right approach to treating COVID-19? Especially once we realized that 60 to 90% of those vented do not survive. The experience and observations of nurse Erin Olszewski seem to offer some answers to these pressing questions, while simultaneously providing frontline information about a number of other hot-button topics, including the disproportionate number of COVID deaths among Americans of color, the distortions surrounding do not resuscitate orders, the disregard for personal protective equipment standards, and the clustering of COVID-positive with COVID-negative patients, which she witnessed again and again, and the tremendous amount of nosocomial or hospital-acquired infections that resulted. Perhaps most urgently of all, she speaks of the therapies and protocols employed in her home state that did work. Erin was brought from Florida by a service funded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. She spent almost a month at Elmhurst. What she saw there compelled her to become a reporter and whistleblower alongside her already extensive nursing duties. She made recordings, posted warnings on social media, and spoke through proxies about the nightmare conditions she witnessed. Erin was raised in Wisconsin and enlisted in the Army when she was 17, just before 9/11. She deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. Part of her duties involved overseeing aid disbursement and improvements to hospital facilities. While in country, she received the Army Commendation Medal for meritorious service and was wounded in combat. Erin eventually retired as a sergeant and became a civilian nurse in 2012. A mutual friend who was helping her make hidden camera recordings introduced us to Erin. After working a long shift at the hospital, she agreed to do an impromptu interview in her room at the Marriott Marquis overlooking Times Square. We encourage the viewer to leave aside their preconceptions about the nature of what is happening, to hear firsthand from an eyewitness who at great personal expense and without political prejudice of any kind now openly reports what she discovered in the hopes that the information will be put to good use to save lives. She began by telling us one of her most disturbing findings, that people who had repeatedly tested negative for COVID were being described as COVID confirmed.
Okay, so if you look close, I'm in my patient's chart. I am pulling up like their laboratory results. So if you look here, you'll see COVID-19 bioreference lab. Here are the test results. As you can see, 5/1/2020 at 17:16, not detected. They test for a second time, 5/4/2020 at 17:59, not detected. So both of those are negative. Scroll up to the top. This is my patient. They are on a vent and they are being called COVID-19 confirmed, droplet in contact and eye protection.
So this person is droplet and eye COVID confirmed. Positive A, click, not detected. No resulting lab available. Oh, pretty good.
While Erin was using her hidden camera to document another chart showing a patient with negative test results who nonetheless was labeled COVID confirmed, another travel nurse entered the room. They began to discuss what Aaron was seeing.
If it says bioreference,
That's
that means
here.
it's done here.
So not detected here, but
So
it's
that's-
presumptive. Now they're all,
But they are detected. They're saying it's positive, not detected.
but it's not
What does that
detected.
say? What does that mean?
So I
You
was,
said that they were vented immediately upon being brought in. Is that?
yeah. So the thing is they're coming in with difficulty breathing, and a lot of these patients are really coming in with anxiety because they're scared. And when I was back home, I was working in the ED out in the tents, and most people that were coming through with like symptoms of just, anxiety, or, they're worried and they're breathing fast, and then they get all nervous. So this is how the people are like coming in. Now, I'm not saying that some of them, don't have COVID. Like there are people that come in and they really do need help, not to the extent of a vent, but they need help. But these other people, like this person who wasn't COVID multiple times, and a lot of them are on either Medicaid or Medicare. They're poor. They're from, a lower class. We're at a public hospital. They need the funding. So they take them. And they tell them pretty much that if they don't get on a vent, then they're probably not going to survive. But the reality is, if they get on that vent, the likelihood of them walking out the hospital is slim to none.
And can I ask you, what PEEP are they on? And is that being mandated or specified what the pressure is on the vent?
Here's the thing with this. So you don't have actual doctors that know critical care, ICU doctors on these floors. There's a dentist, and there are residents with these. So residents are essentially students, and they have no idea what they're doing. Like I had to police a resident because he wrote an order for me to run Versed, which is.
So I wanted to show that video because I tried to play it earlier and it didn't show. And I think it's very important. This is, I'm doing a podcast here and I'm showing this because of a gentleman who works for the Parks Department tested positive today. And he was sick all week at work. And many, the co-workers are upset because they feel like those who are not vaccinated have to get tested. Those who are vaccinated are not getting tested. However, they're still getting COVID and they're still able to spread it. And this man, the assistant to the commissioner of the Parks Department, was sick, wasn't sent home. He wasn't sent to get tested until today, Friday, and he found out at the annual holiday party. So now people are upset. People in the city Parks Department need to get tested, every single one. And now, should the city mandate those who are vaccinated be tested weekly also? Yeah, I think so. I think that knowing the fact that people who get vaccinated still get the virus and can still spread it, absolutely. They should too be tested. This gentleman who tested positive today also had the booster shot. So you would think that he was super protected, but that goes to show that wearing a mask, having the vaccine and a booster shot does not guarantee you will not be infected and does not guarantee you will not spread it. The argument some people make is, well, you don't get as sick. Do your research. Many people who are getting vaccinated are getting sick and are getting hospitalized. Many are dying. Children are suffering from myocarditis, and CDC has said that the rate of myocarditis among teenagers, particularly in the age of 15, 16, is 40% higher than what they anticipated it to be. So they knew that kids would get myocarditis. They just didn't know it was going to be at this rate. It's 40% higher than what they expected. I'm just trying to put this information out. I really just care. And that's why I do it. I get a lot of flack for it. I know this is not, having to do with the political stuff, the local politics here in Yonkers. Some people say I'm all over the place. I'm really here just to inform people. I'm not here to have the number one podcast in the nation. I'm not here to be, super rich off a podcast. I'm here to share information. I'm here to give information to people who may not have the time sometimes to look it up. So I share it. And that's what I'm doing with the local politics stuff, sharing information. So that's what I do. So that's my goal. So I hope that you take away something from it. If not, I tried. I'm Freddie Vasquez. Again, tune in this Sunday. And I'm going to let the video play if anyone's interested in watching. But tune in this Sunday. Well, I'll get back to Yonkers politics. And we'll be discussing campaign finance laws. How do some elected officials get around campaign finance laws? Also, who are the campaign contributors to the elected officials we have in office now? Who finances these campaigns? Let's find out Sunday. Join me. And be careful. And if you work in the Parks Department, go get tested. Mr. Brinton, the assistant of the commissioner, probably got everybody infected. Have a good night, folks.
Like the guy over in, yeah, and they end up positive. Like the guy over in 29, I had him upstairs because I was on CCU before it. Yeah. And he came in with a stroke.
I know, that's what 26-1 was, a stroke.
And no COVID. And now he's got COVID and he's on a vent.
Well, it's because we gave it to him here.
I don't know how this ended up being COVID Central.
I know, but she literally came in with a broom and then she left like 5 minutes later. My patient had died of COVID and she didn't mop the floor. She was cleaning, getting prepared for my next patient, and she didn't mop the floor. I was like, that's a standard. I didn't think I had to tell her that.
People don't know how to properly wear their PPE. Let's go back to Ebola. Like when Ebola was here, people took that very seriously. You have a nurse in the room in all the head to toe PPE. This is Ebola. This is I'm going to compare it. And you have another nurse that's outside the room handing supplies. You know, the clean nurse and the dirty nurse, right? Going, and when they're taking their outfit off, one nurse is unzipping the back so she can take it out, walking out. They're not doing that here. We're wearing like our scrubs, and then we have maybe like a net top. Our pants are exposed. they're wearing booties over their shoes, but the booties are going room to room to room, and then people will wear them through the hospital.
So there's massive spread just through the improper use of the PPE.
I mean, it's a no-brainer. Everyone, it looks good. It looks good. Looks like you're super safe, but in reality, it's ridiculous. So you'll go room to room. You'll maybe take that top off, put a new top on, but the rest of you is still exposed.
But I mean, why are they doing this? You know?
Suspected, and then there's like principal hospital. Does that mean like a nosocomial? Is that what that means?
Like we have in the United States, and we've had it for a while, a rapid test. It's 45 minutes. Do you have COVID? Don't you? They're not doing the rapid test here.
They're not.
No.
Okay.
At
Elmhurst, you've never seen them.
Nope, they don't do it. It's too expensive. They do 5 day. It's like 5 to 7 day turnaround. In the meantime, they admit them onto COVID units. So non-COVIDs, the rule outs are going to COVID units and waiting for the results, even though we have a rapid result, which is 45 minutes, and they're not doing it. No, not one.
But would you say it's too expensive? I mean, isn't this all getting charged to the fund anyway? I mean, why not do it? Why not? Are you saying that?
I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense to me. I asked that doctor about it.
How come you guys don't do the rapid tests here?
Because city claims, I mean, it exists. It's just they don't have access to it. There's only limited supply, so if you have deep pockets, you get it first.
Oh, so money.
Most times it's money about everything, yes.
That's sad.
It's reality.
I compare this hospital to a third world country. I've been in a third world country hospital in Iraq. The Iraq hospital is better than this one, and that says a lot. I've been there. I've been in both hospitals, and this is in the United States, and this hospital is treating low income, mostly people, and it almost makes me feel like they think these people are disposable, and they're not. They're people. You know, people are not disposable. You know, especially the ones that are struggling day in and day out, the hard workers. You know, like trying to reach that American dream, and they're not given a chance because they're brought to this place where nobody cares.
And is there an understood financial incentive to diagnose COVID?
Yeah, of course. So in the hospital that I'm in right now, it's all COVID at this point. Every single floor is COVID, and they made it that way, obviously, for a reason, in my opinion. But a person cannot come to the floor unless they have a COVID diagnosis.
Is the reason, did they not want to cross-contaminate? Would that be the legitimate reason why you would create an all COVID floor?
Here's why I will say no to that, is because they're admitting people for quote COVID rule out. So this guy was probably admitted COVID rule out, tested him. They saw that it came back negative. They probably already did something where they needed to now call him COVID, in the hopes that if they're putting him on a COVID floor and there's nurses going room to room to room, he will get it, and then they'll be back to when he does pass that he did have COVID.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a charge. I mean, what makes you think they really want them to get COVID? Because
money. I think it's at least $29,000 per patient, and then you have to think you are also charging supplies and more supplies and more supplies. That's just like a bonus money.
But but the residents aren't getting that, right? I mean, why?
Oh, that's the thing. And I actually I've went at it with a lot of residents already, and they're order followers. So there was a resident, and I have this on tape. I taped it because it was just so disgusting to me. A 37-year-old which is my age, was not a DNR, is a full code. His family in depth discussed with the doctors that they want us to do everything they can to save him. He came in talking. He was very terrified. He was just like, totally alert, knew what was going on, and they convinced him to be on a vent. Now he's dead. But the doctor said when I got onto shift that if he codes, that we are not to resuscitate or try to save him. And we flipped.
This is important. I just asked them if we can put a DNR order, and they said no. That's up to the attending.
Okay, so we're gonna code him.
That's what I said, and they said no, we're not. I said yes, we are. We're obligated to. So then
you got to say something though, like it's our license. Unfortunately, you guys got to put it in order. Just something.
That's what I said. I said I'm obligated.
Yeah.
What did she
so
say?
then she's like, the higher up said. I said, I don't care what they said.
What higher up? God? We don't have a God here making decisions.
I said, I don't care what they said.
So we're supposed to. He's not DNR, but we're treating it as DNR.
Basically.
Does his family know?
His family knows the situation. I think they called them and they told them. They were trying to do a 2 or 20% for whole day spent like in the 80s saturating. It was this one on the forehead didn't work. It was this one worked, and it came out. And when I changed it, I was like, oh shoot, it's 90.
Yeah.
So they started playing around with the
Oh shoot, it's 90. He changed the pulse ox from his head to his finger, and he's like, oh, it's 90. He's fine.
So what was that?
So that was, we were just getting on shift because we're starting the night shift at 7. And that was the nurse from the day shift saying pretty much we shouldn't code him if he's going to code. And then I turned my glasses on.
Why are we being told not to code him, essentially? That's what he said. I mean, because I'm going to tell you right now, if he bottoms out, I'm jumping on his chest. Period. Point blank. It's going to happen.
Okay.
Because until that status is changed in the computer, that's what I'm obligated to do under my nursing license.
Right. I mean,
because you guys aren't going to back me up and protect me.
Well, Elmhurst does have a policy given, like a COVID policy, given the scarcity of dialysis and blood.
It can be a chem code, it can be whatever.
But it's not, it's a difference. Normally the standard is whatever the family says, like we just do. So if they would say code them for 5 years, like we just do that until they die. It's a little bit different now because of the new policy in place with our in place, which is that you don't need full family, like you can just tell someone that it's medically futile and that we're not willing to just pour blood and resources into something that would be impossible to get back. But look, it's brutal. He's 37. I mean, it's brutal.
Well, so they tried. Well, our higher ups have agreed and our attendings agree that this is futile care at this point. He's not going to make it. I said, he doesn't have an epi drip going. He doesn't have anything to sustain going. And I said, and who decided this? And I said, can you put a comfort care order in then? No, we can't do that. Can you put a DNR order in? No, we can't do that. I said, so what's our plan?
Do we have to modify?
She goes, well, he's dying. And I'm like, I understand that, but there needs to be an order indicating that either I'm doing compressions or I'm not doing compressions.
Well, I can say that we can all be in agreement that we will do it. I will definitely.
Because I'm going to jump on him.
Yeah.
So will I. I'll go right with you. I don't care. That's what we're here for. I'm not playing like these
until they
games.
change his status that he is a DNR, and they can do it through physician consent if they've talked to the family.
Yeah.
But until they change it, and I see it, he's a full code to me.
We know when someone we're close. We'll pull the code card up and be ready. We're ready. I had the epi ready. That's one of the first things we do. And she wouldn't let me give it. So this was that woman. And the entire time, and this was over his body, his alive body. And we're arguing and she's laughing. She was smirking. And how this man died was the nurses arguing with the doctors over him as he was dying. And she's smirking the entire time. It was probably one of the worst experiences in my entire life. But all I can think about is that at least he knows that we were fighting for him when he died. No. But this was my conversation after what happened, and the guy I told you about earlier that had pulled his tube out, he was up at that point. Like, he was on the same floor. He had pulled his, he was the one that they wanted to sedate. So at that point, he was doing better where he could walk. This doctor had put a diaper on him and told him to poop in his pants. So after the code, I went to go check on him, and he goes, I have poop in my pants. I'm like, why do you have poop in your pants? And he said that because the doctor told him that he has to do that. And I just lost it. It was her.
This is wrong. It is straight up just, it is wrong. And I am 37 years old. I have been in a hospital since I've been 16. Military hospitals that well.
What aspect of it was wrong to you? I agree that there were parts of it that were wrong too. But
Calling a patient a DNR when there's no order for it, and telling us, like straight up telling us, you're not doing anything. That's wrong. If that was my brother or my father or anybody, I would be furious. And I guarantee you, if I called his family right now and told them what happened, they would be furious too.
I flipped. We were all crying. There's a lot of nurses that know that this is wrong, but they're afraid to like say anything publicly.
She said, when I was talking to her, she said, we're not always given the orders. It comes from the top down. And I was thinking, that's my exact problem with everything. Where's it coming from? What's the purpose? Are you guys really trying to kill everybody like everybody thinks?
Within our unit, it was a big fight, and ultimately the kid died with us over his body arguing about this.
Girls over there.
Yeah.
And the doctor will just write it up that we
Yeah, I don't trust them though, because I don't know one.
I'm sorry. I'm not doing that.
There's a doctor that came upstairs that I had worked with prior. He was working in the ED and heard what happened. He came into the room with me and told me that what I did was good. And that, so there are good doctors in here. I guess the word traveled after this.
You mentioned earlier that this is a common occurrence where people come in able to speak and they just have low oxygen levels and they're put on a vent. What's going on there?
I don't know. I honestly have no idea how they're assuming everybody is just the same. There's no individuality anymore. These residents, I think a lot of them are just stone cold. There's no emotion, and they don't view people as people anymore. And it's really sad. Like I came a little bit later, after the big rush, but there was still a lot of people coming in, and a lot of us were just in shock. Within the first couple days, you could see exactly what was going on.
My bigger problem with this whole scenario is when they intubate people who don't need it.
Yeah.
And it looks very clear to me that they're just pushing it.
You almost feel like you are literally living in the Twilight Zone, and you feel like you're the only sane one in a bunch of insane people. And it's scary because these are the people that others are trusting to take care of them, and they're really doing the opposite. I'm to the point where I'm afraid that I'm going to start thinking that this is normal. I don't want to ever get to that point because they think that, like the people I work with that are local nurses and doctors don't see anything wrong with this.
Really? I mean, they don't.
No.
Do they see? Was it just like kind of a hard past few months? Is it or?
This has been like this, and from what I hear, I mean, there are good nurses that work there too. Like I have made good friends with a lot of the nurses that do work there. There's good people, but they're outnumbered.
So what happens? People come in like this 37-year-old, and what was he complaining of, or what was going on?
Respiratory distress. He didn't have COVID either. He did not have COVID.
And how do we know that?
I took care of him. I have the same type of results from his chart as I do my other patient.
It was like the day before intubation, he was fine on the rebreather.
And then they intubated, and then he got a pneumo, and then they put in a PEP tube, and then it's been shipped.
And now he's 37 years old and dead.
That's what I'm seeing. Like all these negative tests, and they're putting them on these vents. Hopeful that they'll get it. They're being put on these COVID floor. Is murder. It straight up is. It is setting these people up for failure based on money.
But Medicaid is who pays out, or who's paying this bonus of $29,000?
I believe it's Medicaid, Medicare. It's government money, but I don't know exactly where it's coming from. But I know that it is. But I know the orders are coming from the above, someone above, and everybody says that it's someone higher up. I'm like, good, call them. Like during that DNR when they're telling us, or the full code when they're telling us not to, do CPR. I'm like, all right, call your higher ups then. Let's talk about. And they wouldn't, because they're all scared. Everybody's scared. And everybody's scared to stick up for themselves. And I've called a lot of doctors unethical to their face, and they deserve it.
I'm a nurse. I'm an advocate for my patients. And
to the flip side of it, but I totally agree.
But no. Just wait. You were laughing and you thought it was funny. You were like smirking. You're being really rude to all of us. And I thought that was really.
I'm not being rude in that.
It was really, yeah, you are. It was very disrespectful. And I don't think that you're going to be a very good doctor.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you learned something from this.
Was this the dentist, or or these are residents you're talking to?
This one was a fellow. She was a CCU fellow. Cardiac. She's a cardiac fellow.
What killed him? Did the vent kill him?
Yeah. Oh, yes. They're so sedated. He had probably 8 or 9 drips. It's all sedation. It's all sedation and paralytics. So you are asleep. It is essentially like you're under, you're in surgery, when they put you under like that for a good month straight. There's no way you can recover from something like that. You're brain dead if you do.
So can you list some of the drugs that they're put on the drips?
Yeah, there's propofol, fentanyl, Nimbex, Versed. Gosh, hang on, I have a list. I think it lists from. This is one of my patients was on this. Just one patient. So Nimbex 100 milligrams, Precedex 400 milligrams, fentanyl 2,500 micrograms, heparin 25,000 units, Versed 50 milligrams, Levofed 16,000, Neo 50 milligrams, propofol 10 milligrams, vasopressin 100 units. This is one person, and all these drips are running at the same time into them.
So in the case of this 37-year-old, he comes in complaining of some respiratory distress. Did he have low blood oxygen?
Totally healthy guy, and he was satting that's the oxygen saturations, and like 88, 89.
So a little low.
I mean, yeah, but people do that. You and I probably do that. We're not monitoring our oxygen, all day long.
But he felt shortness of breath, so he came in.
Yes.
And what was the next step? What would have happened next?
He went to a step down unit, among other.
What does that mean? Sorry.
It's just a unit where people aren't quite on the vent yet, and I say on the vent yet because I should call it a step up unit to the vent. But
so was he? What's the phrase you used? COVID
rule out.
COVID rule out.
So that's how they admit everyone to the floor that doesn't have a positive COVID immediately.
Okay, so he's put in the step down unit, which is a euphemism for step up unit.
Yeah.
And what happens to him there? What's going on there?
Oxygen. I wasn't in this unit. My friend was.
So just normal oxygen, nasal?
No, they'll do like a high pressure.
So what does that mean exactly? What does it look
pretty
like?
much like a forced. It's a big. It almost looks like a big, thick nasal cannula, and you put it in your nose, and it forces the pressure in. It can almost be like, it's still causing your lungs to expand, right? But what they really need to be doing is like the non-rebreather mask, but they just skip it usually. They go right to the high pressure, so their lungs are already,
So, and tell us what a non-rebreather mask is.
So that's just, there's a bag that is on the end of these masks. It's not forcing air down your lungs.
Okay.
It's more natural.
Okay.
And you can put 100% oxygen. That's what people need.
Okay. So, and that really is not the protocol. It's not the protocol to start people on that.
I mean, it should be, but it's not how they're doing it now.
I mean, in your prior experience dealing with people with low saturation, would that be what you would do?
Oh yeah, that's what we were doing, in my hometown.
And were you having better outcomes there?
Yeah, we didn't have this because we treated them properly.
What would you say the kind of the case fatality rate was?
None. Zero. Yeah, by me, 0.
And what is the likelihood of coming out of the hospital you're in?
I'll tell you that the unit that I've been on, the only person that survived, ironically, is a guy who pulled his own tube out. Yeah.
So he woke up enough to be able to do that?
Yeah. He wanted it out. He should have never been on in the first place. That's a whole nother story.
So let's just keep going with this 37-year-old. So he's on the step down unit and he's being given semi-pressurized oxygen. It's not a rebreather mask. And then what happens to him?
They'll start treating them with medications, that will. And
are they checking his saturation at this all the time? Does he have?
Yeah, he's on a continuous pulse ox, but the minute that he desats, like they'll see like, oh no, he's at 87 now. Or, oh, look at this. Oh, he's going to need more help. And then they go tell them that they need more help, even if they don't. It's ultimately what it comes down to is like people being just lazy and wanting to treat. They just want to treat.
Is there any incentive to you're saying that the incentive for the residents is kind of experimental almost.
They're order followers.
And they're
like they want to please. That's what they're doing. They want to please. And like the protocol of that hospital is to treat.
To treat invasively according to this protocol. And do we know where this protocol originates? I mean, because obviously the governor was talking about getting vents. Everyone was talking about getting vents. So this seems like this comes from very high up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna tell somebody, the entire world essentially, especially the entire United States, when they're like, we need the vents, like if you tell people something enough, they're going to start believing it. So that's exactly what happened.
Tell me why Cuomo immediately thought 2 months ago that they'd need 30,000 beds. How do you just come up with a number?
Cuomo's an idiot too.
Well, Medicaid's paying them that
Oh
money for
yeah,
people.
29,000 a bed.
So our 37-year-old, what happens to him next? So they say, okay, it looks like he's at 87. He needs more. And so is that the point at which they would intubate him?
Yeah, that's when he stepped up. So he stepped up to the ICU.
He steps up to
for
the ICU.
More care, right? They start off with a little bit of like muscle relaxer and, he's woozy. You have to remember there's no family with these patients. So they're alone and in hospital by themselves during a pandemic that they're terrified of already. That's likely what brought him in the first place. He's totally healthy otherwise. And then you have doctors. They think they're doctors, but they're resident. Technically, they're doctors with absolutely zero experience. I've had to teach residents several nursing skills, telling them that they have a choice, like they could likely die from this, or they can be saved by, getting a tube and that will help them breathe. They don't call it ventilator. We can give you a little help breathing. And that's it. Then they get the sedation and they go to sleep, and that's it. They don't wake up. He's in a body bag.
And so the drugs have a deleterious effect on the body, on the brain, but is there something about the pressurization of the lungs that is also causing harm?
Yeah, they're having the